Welcome to our next podcast. As you can hear, I'm taking some feedback and changing the vocals in my voice.
They are more dynamic now.
Yeah, so welcome back. And yes, we've received a lot of constructive criticism and we're quite grateful. So one of them were actually that we shouldn't match our clothes. And we're trying to make a statement that we will not take all criticism. So yes, thank you for the feedback. Please continue giving feedback. And also, I hope you guys made some coffee to enjoy with us so that you can just relax and listen to us discuss things. And hopefully your thoughts are provoked when you're sitting here with us. All right.
All right. If
Jordan.
you don't know how to make coffee, we did include a part of this video just for you.
Hoping you could see. Yes. Yes. So please kick it off for us.
All right. So this week's podcast is going to be how to decide on what to believe, a practical approach. Nice and ASMR. The reason we chose this podcast was it was my turn to choose. So this is something that I'm very interested in. It's a personal journey that I've been in trying to answer that question. And while I probably don't have the best answer tonight, it is my current answer. And the podcast has obviously pushed us in a direction to find out what is the reason you should believe. Okay. But I'm going to start off with you. You've had time to prepare.
Thank you.
So I want you to answer the question for me. Just start off the initial thing. I am a blank person. I don't believe in anything. How should I decide on what to believe in?
All right. So just before I answer that, I just want to give a shout out to my parents for always supporting me. I'm grateful to be on this podcast. I'm so so okay. Jokes aside, let's get serious about what we believe in. You're a blank slate. You want to know what to believe in. I'll say, okay. In the previous podcast, we discussed the three things that affect what, goes behind the scenes of when you make the choice of what to believe in or not. So I'd first say, go watch that podcast.
Oh, okay.
And then I'd say, okay, so remember we spoke about, I'll just quickly run through them again. It's what you can perceive in reality, your senses, what you've seen, what you've heard. And then the second is what other people have seen. So other people can confirm that what you've seen. And then the third is what makes sense based on what has always made sense in your reality, what is consistent with your perspective on reality. So using those three, and then also being aware of the fourth of knowing what is you want to believe. What is it that you want to believe? So being aware of that one. Okay, so I'd say, okay, look at the evidence for everything. And then...
Just going to pause you there. So just for some context, those 4 reasons that you gave now are the reasons that you should just believe in anything.
No.
Belief is a concept.
No, so it's not the reasons that you should believe. It's the things that you have to look at it's...
The things that constitute belief, a belief. Or the action of belief.
The choice.
Choice, okay.
Because I believe that to believe in something is a choice.
Okay.
I actually had the thought earlier today that it might not be a choice. Because someone might say, okay, will you believe in this for $1 million? I think I saw that as a headline somewhere.
Yeah.
Believe in this for $1 million. I'd say, I could not. I can pretend to believe something I don't believe in for $1 million. But ultimately, I know it's not true. So...
But yes... The 4 reasons.
Sorry,
there you go.
You distracted me. So those are the 4 reasons, or the 4 things I'd say be aware of when making the choice. Then you must look at something that is an option to believe in. Okay? Because I can't believe in something that's not an option to believe in. And also, apologies, I'm going to have to take another step back. So... Remember in the previous podcast, we should just call this part 2. I'm referring back so much. I made the comment about the objective truth.
Okay.
Okay. So if someone's a blank slate, I must explain to them that an objective truth is something that will always exist. It's not a matter of I'm assuming it exists. I'm going to make an argument to prove to you that it will always exist. All right? All right. So, let me just check my notes there. All right. If there is a God, then there is a truth. For some people, because I got feedback, I won't say who, but they struggled with the difference between objective and subjective reality. It gets confusing. So I'm going to make it different words that it's going to be easy to follow for most people. It's truth and opinion. Objective reality is truth. We believe there's only one truth, and everything else is our opinions. We believe our opinion should be the same as the truth. Okay? So I should prove to them that there is a truth. And I say that if there is a God, there is a truth. Right?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It's a statement, but you haven't proven why.
Okay. So Jordan Peterson said this: God is what you use to make sense of reality. Okay? Because from all of our perspectives, reality makes sense. We are using some system which can be defined as God, which dictates what is right, what is wrong. Okay? If you have the Christian faith, then you would say your God is the one of Christ. If you have a different faith, you have a different God. If you're an atheist, most likely, then you'd say there's no God. But then how do you make sense of reality? You still know what's right and what's wrong. Most likely, I don't know, I'm not an atheist, can't speak for them, but most likely they become their own God, or the government becomes their God. Whoever dictates what is right or wrong for you, whether it's your feelings, what you want to be right, you will be your own God. And in that sense, because we all have a reality that makes sense to us, we have a God that makes it make sense. Does that make sense? So no matter what you choose to believe in, whatever you're using will make an existence of a God for you. And because there's an existence of a God, there is a truth to which you abide.
100%. And I'll just add something small there. Atheism, I think people try and argue that one, but usually they believe in something like naturalism, which is still a worldview in which there's some cause of events that take place, and it's still something that directs you to make decisions a certain way. So in some sense, a God.
So now, Mr. Blank Slate,
Yes.
you know that there's truth and there's opinion. Okay. So I'll secondly then, make you aware that everything you believe is your opinion of what is truth.
Okay.
And then there's the 4 points I mentioned. You must look at those 4 points to discern how valid your opinion is to be close to the truth. I would say, to the best of your ability, look at those 4 things and make sure that the first 3 things, your perspective, makes sense in reality. You can perceive it, or smell it, or feel it, and other people also. So you must try and get as much as possible those 3 things, because that will increase the chances of something to be, it's more probable that will be truth and not just your opinion. And then the 4th thing, be aware of what it is that you want to be true. If you're not aware of what you want to be true, you will not understand how that's going to influence your biasness in choosing what to believe in. So you must be aware of that to be able to pull yourself out of that impact that it has. So that's kind of my answer. I don't know. I'm not telling you what to believe. I am giving you the practical approach. Some people would say, well, that's not practical enough. It's still very philosophical.
Yes.
So let's use an example. Okay. So
I wonder which religion you're gonna choose.
no, I'm not gonna choose it. I'm not gonna
go to
let's not go into that yet.
Right.
Okay, that's part 3. Or later in this podcast, depends how quickly we get there. Depends how quickly you can prove to me how I should believe.
Okay.
But we'll get there. So you might remember this. It was last week, Wednesday. I got home and you said, Ruan, our cleaner came to me and she said that a monkey came into the house, picked up your coffee pot, and broke it. So there's no coffee more.
I don't think she said they picked it up, but yes,
Oh.
the monkeys broke it.
Okay.
I don't think she saw them pick it up, and
Oh, okay, okay.
very dramatic.
That's,
but
You
yes.
see, that's how I picture it playing out in my head, because it's like in the middle of the table. I can't see it slipping off. It's not like they had to have picked it up. I don't know.
Okay.
But anyway, so let's use what I've now explained as a practical approach to see, should I believe this story or not? Okay. Point 1, does it make sense? So, yes, monkeys do break into our house. Many times I've seen my eggs broken on the floor, unfortunately. So it makes sense in reality that is a possibility. So, cool. Number 2, did I perceive it? I did not. So there's like, unfortunate. Number 3, did anyone else see it? So this is a difficult one because I didn't see it. You didn't see it. Only the person who has the incentive to lie saw it. Now, what the incentive to lie? That's a good question. She might have broken it by accident and doesn't want to give it away. So now I need a question. Did she break it? Did the monkeys break it? Yeah. Did you break it? And then you just came and blamed it on them. I didn't think
you
of
got
this.
me.
I never thought about this until this moment. So maybe that's the last test. Look them in the eye and ask them, are you lying to me? The eyes are the window
Anyway.
to the soul. See, you're trying to change the topic quickly. Yeah. All right. So I don't have all 3. So it's not that easy for me to believe in something like that. And what do I want to be true? Do I want it to have been the monkeys, or do I want it to have been our cleaner? That doesn't actually affect this situation because neither of them is better for me. I don't want either of them to have broken it. I would want to be like, joke's on you, it's not broken, here's your coffee back. So that doesn't really play into this. But you can see how I approach this. This is the event. You can say it's a religion. This is the religion. This is what I've perceived. This is what I've heard other people say. This is what my senses have told me. This is what I want to be true. And then that systematic approach is going to say, okay, I realize faults in my logic. I realize I want this to be true, and that's affecting my reasoning. Does that all make sense? Is that a better practical
Yes, I see.
explanation?
You explaining how you want to systematically interact with any sort of situation or information and decide whether it is the truth, or whether to become more confident in the fact that it's the truth.
Higher probability.
Higher probability.
But you can never be certain.
You can never be certain.
Yeah.
Okay, that's very interesting. Yeah.
Back to you now.
Yeah.
Did I prove to you anything?
So the idea that I'm not so 100% on is your initial assumption, which is the proof of an absolute truth.
Okay. You say this at the end?
Yes. No, I mean, I get everything from that point, but you are in search for the highest probability of that a situation is the absolute truth.
Yes.
And you have a systematic approach for that.
Yeah.
But what about that initial assumption? How do you know that there's an absolute truth? Can you explain that again?
Okay, just because God exists.
Okay.
Because God exists, there is a truth. If God did not exist, there would be no truth. It just would be chaos. So I make the assumption that there's a truth because I make the assumption that there is a God, all right? And I make the assumption that there's a God because of the argument I made that things make sense. For things to make sense, there has to be a God.
Okay.
You can argue that, but that is the base of which my argument comes off of.
So you're happy with me saying that you see, I would say, order in the world in
Yes.
some way or another, and you are leaning that or attributing that towards a creator. And then the argument flows from their creator, therefore truth, therefore exploration of truth. What's interesting about your approach is it almost wants to assume a belief in the first place and then have an approach that's based on that initial belief.
It's a bit of a circle, but let's use my 4 tests on the objective truth.
Okay.
It's not something I can perceive, right? Other people have said yes, other people have said no. So it's a 50-50. Does it make sense in the context of reality that I've always had? And for that, I'd say yes. For me, there has been, if 2 people argue, they cannot both be right at the same time if they contradict each other, okay? So if 2 people argue and they contradict each other, they cannot both be right. So if you take the flip side on that, if people are saying the opposite things, one of them are most likely closer to the truth than the other one.
Why can't 2 people be right at the same time? Have you seen
It
the
doesn't make
Hold on.
sense.
Have you seen the picture where one person is looking at a 6 and the other person is looking at a 9, but it's the same number,
Yes.
different perspectives
That's why I put in the words, when they contradict each other.
from the same perspective, the same everything.
No. If they contradict each other, it means they...
A 6 and a 9 is a clear contradiction. They both are seeing a physical reality in front of them and they disagree with each
You
other.
just don't want to believe me. Okay, good argument.
But-
I don't have a counter to that. I'll
All right.
think about that. I'll go pray about that. But maybe let me be true to myself. Maybe I want to believe that there's an objective
Okay.
truth. Maybe I have a need for there to be an objective truth. Because if there's not an objective truth, and this relates to why I chose to follow Christ, if there is no objective truth, much of what I do has no value. Much of the self-discipline and the suffering I've chosen to undergo for the purpose of building my character for the future to be a better person has been for naught. So maybe some part of me needs there to be an objective truth, needs there to be God.
Okay.
But I've been speaking too much. My coffee is getting cold.
It's getting cold.
I want to drink some of it. So I'm going to throw the question
The ball
right
into my
back
court.
at you.
All right.
I am a blank slate. let me pretend to be a whole different person. I am a blank slate.
Okay.
I
This is
have
now to give
no
us some dynamic. Thank you.
opinion.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Right.
Please
Okay.
share to me why.
So, for me, I took a bit of a different approach when looking at the question. Instead of looking at a practical step-by-step analysis of situation by situation, how I can decide consistently every time whether this is true or not and whatnot, I more looked at it from an holistic stance. So I thought most people, if you ask them, if you're a blank slate, this whole thing, they would say, you know, you must go and investigate all of the religions. You must go and read about all of them and just go and speak to the people and, you know, a very academic approach, I want to call it that. An academic approach of go and look what everything is, look at all the facts. Right, that's what everyone says. And then it kind of stops there. No one really digs deeper. And
Okay.
that's what I'm going to try and go into now. So you have a branch there of logic. Okay, you need to go and investigate all the religions. And that branch is one, is there really enough time? Really, is there enough time to do that in your life? You don't actually have a lot of time to go and investigate every single religion, immerse yourself within it. And the reason I say that is because you can die every day. If you know you're going to live 80 years, well done.
Sorry, you can die every day.
Sorry, you can die any day.
Oh, okay.
You can die any day. So if you're still in your, hey, I don't know, your Islam phase,
Yo,
or you're in your Christian phase, and that's
Okay.
not the one, you know, it's a problem. And you can't believe them all at the same time.
why?
Maybe you can.
I was about
Depends
to say
on what
that.
you made. Life of Pi, I know that's a big thing for him, but to truly explore them, I would say focus on one at a time. It's just if you really want to immerse yourself in that world. So is there really enough time? And that's kind of where that branch stops to really make you think, do you have enough time to do it? But let's say you do. Let's say you know you're going to live until 18, you have all the time in the world, and you decide, okay, I'm going to immerse myself within each and every single religion, which there's so many of. So you'll have to choose the main ones. All right. So what criteria do you use while you're investigating each religion?
Can
Do
I just
look at-
pause you?
Yes.
So you are approaching this question in terms of a practical approach to choosing a religion, not to believe in.
No, not necessarily. Because I am taking, in a sense, yes, because I am taking atheism as a religion.
Okay.
So there are ways of believing, and there are different groups of people that believe in those things. And so the way I'm taking it as, you don't have any choice but to choose one. If you don't choose any, then you're basically an atheist, so you've chosen one. Choose the choice not to. And then there's a whole lot of religions as well. So a practical, I guess it's a step on from what you're doing.
Yes.
Which I'm fine
I
with.
think we misinterpreted the question.
I guess it's fine.
Again,
Let's dive into it.
every
Okay.
time. Okay,
So
how
you
to
need
approach
you
a
need a
religion.
criteria, and this is kind of where yours comes in a sense. If you're looking at a religion or belief system, what are the categories of criteria that you're going to evaluate it by? Everyone likes to say history. No. If it's historically true, then it is. And that's an argument that is used for so many religions, is historical accuracy. Another one is, now I need to look at my notes. It just doesn't make logical sense, which is a very tricky one. They're all problematic in my opinion. But does it make logical sense in terms of what you'd expect from a god, and what does the god say he does, and then does he actually do it? So the logical consistency, and so there's a lot of logic involved.
And your expectation of what a god is, and
Lots of things there. And then a third one, which is incredibly important in my opinion, is feeling, ironically. And I want to bring up the ironically there, because it's funny that when you ask most people why they believe, the ones that really stand out are emotional ones. People that give a very emotional encounter, or someone died, and that really sticks, and you leave them, you're like, that's a good reason to believe. I see where you're at. Makes sense. We see that every day. People know that, but they still tell you, if you want to believe in something, go and do an academic investigation of all the religions. So I think most of us agree and understand that most of us believe for emotional reasons. But if someone asks you, how do I decide what to believe? You tell them, don't look at emotions, try and be an academic about it. No sense. So those, I would say, are three main categories that you can look at a religion by, which are all inherently flawed if you look at the idea of objective truth or not. So you take those three. In my notes, I go like this, and then I have a bubble around it, and it says, big assumption, is there an objective truth or not? Because if there's an objective truth, then you take your categories that you think are right, and you investigate them for a truth. How you do that? Great question. But the point being, you are investigating for an absolute truth. Historicity, emotions, logic, whatever you want to use. And history, problematic, because just because people were real in the time doesn't mean that that's actually what happened. It's funny that now we use video as evidence that something happened inexplicably. In 10 years' time, when AI, all this Gen AI has taken its course, that won't be accepted as truth, like evidence. But now we accept writing as absolute evidence. So the whole historical approach is so deep and advanced, and to do it on a surface level, it doesn't work. And what I mean by that is, if you speak to most people, I mean the general person, about why they believe, and they give some sort of historical reason, it usually, that threw me off now. Sorry. So if you speak to most people that give some sort of historical reason, and I don't mean the professors now, I just mean the general person, they usually give very shallow historical reasons that are based on what they heard from someone, which means they haven't really investigated it themselves.
And it happens so much.
It happens so much. And if you investigate it with that person, they're like, no, I heard it somewhere, which means they're really just picking and choosing things that help them to continue believing in what they want to believe in.
And there it is.
Or if they had an emotional experience. So that's the thing now. You kind of accept most people look at this on a feelings basis. So why do we approach it so academically? Is that right to do or not? So that's my first whole thing, schlep of, when you try to approach what to believe, every step of the way there are biases. There's so many biases. And when you make up the categories, the importance you place on the categories, the way that you approach each of the categories. So that's my first big thing. And then when I was really thinking about this, I started to think, but how do I decide on things truly? And it's a very difficult question to answer, because when you really think about it, and you mentioned on this now, I thought this was going to be a huge curveball. I was going to say, can you really choose what you believe? Because both of us will read the same thing, and then all of a sudden you'll believe, but I won't. It's just so unfair, by the way. Like, why are some people granted the ability to look at certain pieces of evidence and be satisfied in their faith? But if I read the same thing, I'm not. Or a general atheist reads the same thing, they're not. That seems so unfair.
Well, there is scripture for that. That belief is a gift of the Spirit, which, if you believe in Christianity and you take scripture as an objective truth, that could answer that question. Why is it easier for some to believe? Some would then blame God. But I think, that's a whole different story, blaming God for something.
All right, so I've said a lot now, basically. All I've done there is followed my train of thought as I thought to myself, now how do I decide on what to believe in based on how everyone says? And the conclusion with that whole monologue is, the way that you choose to believe is going to be inherently biased. And even when you go right down to the bottom and you've chosen, you made the structure of how to look at each religion when you dive into it, there needs to be initial assumptions. Like, is there an absolute truth? Because that assumption will change the way that you look at it completely. So there are initial assumptions, there are inherent biases. There is no absolute true way, as I see it right now, to objectively decide on what you should believe in.
But that is necessary. Do you know why?
Okay, tell me.
Do you know why that's necessary? Because if it was perfectly possible to prove to someone without question the evidence of God, if they then choose to reject him, would that be a possibility? No. So the mere fact that God, in my opinion, wants to have a relationship with us, implying giving us free will, implying we get to choose to reject him or to accept him, to put our faith, because we cannot know for sure, hence the necessity for faith. It's a way that I believe God created reality to allow us to have the choice to be able to reject him.
I would sum that up by saying it allows for faith.
It
necessitates
faith. It implies that faith will be necessary, and I think it's a beautiful thing, because the punishment probably for rejecting God when he's irrefutably proven to you could, I don't know, be worse than hell. I don't know.
Okay.
But you get the point I'm saying. I think
yes.
What you're arguing, I would argue, God agrees. And he created it to be that way, specifically so that we can grapple with reality, so that we can say, I can't prove it, I need to have faith. And that is why Christ says, put your faith in me. And I believe probably all the other religions of Messiah say, put your faith in me.
So that is beautiful. I do agree. But what I find inherently problematic about it is it only makes sense within the boundaries of God and Christ. That's the perspective we're speaking from now. If you take it out of there, it makes no sense, and this is why. And this is a quote now that is totally unsubstantiated. I'll have to go and look it up, but apparently one of the highest predictors of what you will believe in has to do with your geographical location.
That is so interesting.
Right. So
prove it.
Well, it's a stats one. This one you're supposed to go look at a stats, and I accept that my whole argument here is going to be based on this unsubstantiated claim that I came across while I was doing research. So I guess we'll cut it out. Anyway.
No.
But yes.
Give me your argument.
So the point is that in your approach to trying to objectively decide on what to believe in, there is substantiated, perhaps unsubstantiated truth that you are so biased. And so the choice to believe in, for instance, God now, you're lucky. You're very lucky because of the way that I've structured the inability to go look at religions objectively and how unconscious bias is plugged in right into every step. The ability then to go and how then, if you're born into another religion, should you objectively then go about life so that you can come to Christianity assuming that it is true? There needs to be an approach, or we must accept that you must have an encounter.
Yeah.
There's no other way. And for those of us that haven't had an encounter, we also need to accept that if we were in another religion, most likely we'd be there right now. We would be sticking with it. So the same logic will hold that we're using to believe in God right now, for instance. Yeah, that's basically my point. I'll wrap it up there. Where you come from dictates largely what you believe in, and it's because of that deep-rooted feeling that you get that develops from a truth that was put into you from when you were a child. So now, to say that you have the choice to believe is so difficult, because if people had the choice to believe and some sort of approach to religion was there and the evidence was overwhelming in some direction, we wouldn't see that most people are geographically bound in their religion.
So, 3 things, all right? You said some people are more lucky. I would say some are more blessed.
Okay.
Okay. Second thing, it raises the question that a lot of people find to be a good enough reason to not believe. It is, how is God just and fair if some people are more likely to be born into a family, to get to know Him, and others not? Isn't that being unfair? Because certain people are put in a position to find it easier or more inclined to be saved and to go to heaven. That's not fair, is it? And unfortunately, and I learned this from Cliff, when people ask him that question, he says, Jesus never, so this is second-hand information, and I would agree, because I've never read Jesus answering the question either. He says, Jesus never specifically answers the question of what would happen to those who never heard about Him. I can guess and believe and have opinions of what happens to people like that, but I do not know. I cannot know. God knows, and I'll hopefully find out one day when I ask Him. And then the third thing is, so the question was, how would you practically prove to me how to believe? And what I've taken from your monologue is, I don't have a choice in what I believe. It is predictated based on where I'm born and most likely the family, how they raised me. So you, in your attempt to give me a practical approach, has told me, unlucky, you have no choice in what you believe. Is that your answer?
That's kind of my answer. And really, if you want to try and not rebuttal it, but if someone comes to you and said, I have read all the Gospels, I've read the Bible, I've attempted to be a Christian, to try and live the life in faith so that, something would happen, and I still don't believe. Deep within me, I don't believe. I've tried to live the life I've lived, gone and spent time with people of God. I've done what you would reasonably consider to be a diligent approach to religion, and I do not believe. Why? It's so unfair. It's so unfair.
Okay, but then I'm going to have to ask you a serious question, Jordan. If you believe wholeheartedly that whatever religion you choose is not really your choice, and maybe not even religion, everything you choose to believe, like you believing that this podcast is a good thing, you believing that you're in love with your girlfriend, that's not your choice, is it?
You made it personal.
I have to make it personal, because that's when things really, people are like, whoa.
Yes.
So why do you believe in Christ then? Do you not think that you are then just maybe making a mistake. Are you
Okay.
nodding yes?
No. I thought you weren't done.
So yeah, that's the question I want to ask you then, because it seems quite concerning. It seems that, well, I don't know if I have a choice to ask this question, but I believe this to be the correct question to ask you in this moment.
So, a tough question given the case that I've made now. And the last point I was going to say before we get to that
All right.
was, I don't think you can choose what you believe. But if you are meant to believe in something, if there's something out there that is going to make sure that you believe in something, the only thing you can do within your own power is to make sure you are exposed to the right things. So the way I'm thinking about it is like, given your personality and your preference and the way that you were brought up, there are a certain set of conditions and information that will allow you to comfortably believe. And your due diligence is in exposing yourself to as much as possible so that you can try and meet those conditions if they exist.
I feel inclined to disagree with your argument that belief is not a choice. But I can't think of an example, but actually I can.
Okay.
You answer the question first of why you believe in Christ, because part of my answer as to why I believe in Christ is going to answer how what I believed changed. Okay? Actually, a very simple question. If I show you something which is more evidence about something else, you can change that. Oh, I believed you, but now he said something else. Now I don't believe you. Okay, but you're kind of saying that you don't have a choice.
That's the point.
You don't have a choice.
But you have the due diligence to expose yourself to more information that might help or might change your mind, which is the set of conditions for you to become now different in your beliefs.
So you're basically making the argument that we're all a ball, right? We're all falling down.
Yes.
You don't have a choice to fall.
Okay.
Falling is not an option.
Okay.
But there's a hole, which is the correct hole, the objective truth we all want to end up in. And the more things we expose ourselves to, is the more things we put in place to kind of let this ball have a higher chance of falling into the correct position.
Yes.
Is that kind of...
Yes, which assumes an object, an
there's a hole.
absolute truth, that there's a right hole.
Oh.
So you need to assume first that there is an absolute truth. And then from there you can say, I need to expose myself to as much information as possible so that the right conditions for me will cause me to believe. Because that is all I can do.
To cause you to believe in the correct thing.
Exactly.
Because you're going to believe in... If you have two options, you're going to believe in one of them. If you have three options, you're going to believe in one of them. So the better... But that's also then making the assumption, if the correct option exists...
Yes, which is the absolute truth argument.
That you will be inclined to believe the correct one. Do you believe that?
But that's my whole due diligence argument. All that I can do is expose myself to it as much as possible in the hope that the right conditions are there and they convince me to believe. Because that's my whole thing. You don't really convince yourself. The evidence and the way that you think and the way that you feel convinces you. And so you almost think of yourself as a separate entity that experiences the world. And that's how you believe. So that's why I say you don't really have a choice to believe what to believe, but you have a choice to expose yourself to more information that will change the way that you do believe, which seems like a choice.
To have a higher chance to end up believing
exactly
that which we hope is the objective truth.
100%.
Okay, I get you.
So
well, I'm less concerned about you.
You're less concerned now. And I think I kind of answered your question. You can kind of get why I do believe now there is big initial assumptions. It has to do with my parents in large part seeing the fruits of what they believe in, and also my exposure to... I was brought up very Christian, and so I have good reasons already that I can already latch onto.
Okay.
And the type of life that I want to live, and I completely admit this is biased, the type of life I want to live, my optimistic version of the future when I have a wife and kids and is a Christian lifestyle. That's what I want for myself. Like, it's a feeling.
Why?
That's my bias. That's what I'm saying.
But
That's
why do you have that feeling?
so.
Why
I think
does your
what you might be alluding to here is that perhaps there's some deep intrinsic need that everyone has to end up that way, and that meets it.
Wait,
But,
which way? The Christian way
the Christian
or
way.
the happy way?
well,
Because we
I
assume
know
that
it's
the Christian
yeah,
way
I
is the
know it's
path to the happy way.
Well, I think it's happy, but
I think so many. Sorry, I just want to make a point there. I think so many people believe that the Christian way is the pathway to a happy life.
ooh, okay.
But Christ promises the opposite, and many times we miss that. He says you must pick up your cross. So if you're choosing the Christian way because that's a lifestyle you want, just clarify to me, what is that
I
lifestyle
get
you
what
want?
you're saying. I think this can be answered by looking at an atheistic perspective of life for the rest of your life. It's not very nice. As much as there's a lot of suffering and persecution when it comes to choosing a belief, the alternative to believing nothing is to have no meaning in life. And happiness, in large part, comes from meaning and responsibility. That's now Jordan Peterson.
No,
You don't, but you disagree with that.
because those atheists could just as well say, I give myself meaning and truly believe that, which is then not their choice.
Well, I would then argue with the fact that they give themselves meaning based on a whole argument, which is you go all the way down and there is a God. And if you are your own God, you're not consistent with what you want. You are pleasure seeking, and we've proven that, well, not we've proven, pleasure seeking doesn't last for long. So if you leave yourself to yourself, you'll find that the God you serve is not a very nice, omnipotent, loving. No, you do not want that. And that's just a reflection of your deep inner self. If I was my own God, I would not enjoy my time here.
Are you saying this because you're making the argument that, that lifestyle of an atheist is kind of, you know what it leads to, no value and it's empty. Is this based off of your experience?
Yeah, I tried it in Boston.
You tried it?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have experience to believe it?
But I don't like
You've
doing
seen
that.
other
So
people?
doing-
What, you don't like
well,
trying?
No, I don't like saying, okay, now I'm going to be an atheist. But if I reflect on the way that I behaved and when I looked at myself at the time, I don't like to label myself as, oh, I'm this or I'm that. And that was because of, I just wanted to be in a period where I was looking and trying and asking questions. And to identify during that point is to almost, I feel, put a bias on myself.
Okay.
So I was very apprehensive of saying I was an atheist, and now everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, this is Jordan's redemption story." But the point being, let's take it back to the point, is my understanding of the impractical nature of trying to go about religion in an objective way has put me in a position where I say, okay, all I can do is try and do some due diligence in exposing myself to as much information as I can and hoping that the right set of conditions for my personality and my mind cause me to believe in the one true God.
Okay. So that your answer then to the question why Christ is you exposed yourself to as many options and you've ended up with Christ not because anything else but that was what you chose to believe.
Yes.
Outside of your
Look, I would say it's not. There's not like a main reason. It's a whole host of reasons, but none of them are substantiated by evidence. Oh no, the Bible is historically accurate or anything like that. It has been more of a feeling thing, which I recognize, and maybe is a bit problematic. But a lot of the content I'm consuming now has to do with trying to expose myself with more information about belief in God and not God in an attempt to be diligent in my exposure. But yeah, it's tough, man. I've now not really given you good reasons of why I believe. I'll dig more into that another time, I think. But I have given my dilemma and my way to deal with it. But I'm interested. What's your What's your solution? Why do you believe? Why do you believe in Christ?
Okay, I won't call it a solution. The whole thing about why do you believe, it's very subjective. I wouldn't say because of where I was born. I would say it's subjective because there are certain things that I think certain individuals find more important than other things. So I met the criteria of what I was looking for. Let me explain. So I was in university, studying, and I questioned faith. I wouldn't say I jumped to being an atheist, as some people, but I I was looking around, living life, and then I was seeing all these people indulging in the world. They were drinking and woman, all of these things, and I was like, why am I not having so much fun? I think that's a question many people ask themselves when they see these things. I was like, no, because I believe that to be wrong. And I'm like, why do I believe that to be wrong? It's like, no, because God says it's wrong. I'm like, but other gods say other things. So I'm a Christian. Why am I a Christian? Why do I believe these rules? And then I really questioned why I believe what I believe. And much credit to friends and them helping me in this journey, but a lot of it came down to I am withholding myself from doing all these earthly fun things purely because of what I think is true. But have I really decided that this is going to be the life I want to live? Because it was like at this moment of clarity, like, this is just, I've been following this path, that my parents raised me in, and I wanted to become president. And I'm like, no. I was like, psychologist? No. Engineer? Yeah. And look, I'm now an engineer. So, shouldn't have said that. Now you know what I'm doing. But so I ended up kind of following in this lifestyle for a very long time based on what my parents carved out for me. And I was like, no, what if they're wrong? So I was like really in a moment of questioning everything. So I then said to myself, all right. I've never personally experienced religion or a God like many other religions, many other people, many of my own friends have claimed. I was like, okay, so I haven't personally experienced it. So let's say I used my tests. I didn't have personal experience with it. Based on my reality, it did not make sense because I'd never seen it. So I'd never perceived it. I'd never seen in reality. I'd never seen God. I've never seen anyone experience God. I didn't grow up in a church where the Holy Spirit, as many churches and many faiths or different religions, there was no encounter that I've seen or had. And then other people was the only thing I had to go off of. And that was like, ish. And the reason I questioned that part of what I was believing was because I was like, but what do I want to be true? And seeing these nice things that other people are really enjoying and indulging in, I was like, well, kind of want that. I'll confess. I wanted to be in the world because it looked fun. And then I was like, okay, what if I never experienced God? What if it was never part of reality that made sense? If I could know now that for the rest of my life, I won't know God, I won't experience God, is that a reason for me to reject my faith? I was like, because I'll never believe more than I believe now. Do I believe now enough? Do I have enough belief based on literally what other people say? And that includes scripture, because it's Mark, Matthew, Luke, John. It's their eyewitness accounts, Paul's letters. It's other people. It's all of this evidence is external. There's no internal. And I was like, is that enough for me to believe? And it wasn't. It was not. I don't think it should be for anyone, because it's very dangerous. And when it comes to believing, the reason I look for all three is to increase the probability of being right, kind of. And that was like a really low probability, like, dangerous. But when I was a little kid, it stems back when I was 10 years old. I was sitting at the table with my family, and I think my dad was reading the part about Solomon, and he had a wish. We could ask for anything. And he asked for wisdom, and I was like, wow, I want that. I want wisdom. So I gave a little 10-year-old prayer of faith. God, if I could have a wish, I'd like wisdom. And ever since then, for some reason, more, I had this strong desire in my heart to be two things. An absolute great husband to my wife, and the best father I could possibly be to my children. And I was like, this is what I want to be. And I looked at Christ, because I'd been raised to know more about his stories and the biblical stories of Christ. And I was like, that is a man who I want to follow in their footsteps. If I look up to someone, you know, as a kid in school, they like to ask you, who's your role model? I'd be like, Christ. Yeah. And not because he's God.
You were that kid.
I was not that kid because he's God or because it looks cool or because I was trying to impress anyone. You know, I barely had any consciousness of what I really believe in and faith and any of that in school. It was just like, you know, this guy's legit. This guy's legit. And I didn't follow sports or anything like that. You know, I wasn't like one of these kids. So I was like, no, I want to be like Christ because of what he teaches, because what he said, what he did. You know, he's an awesome guy. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna commit to this lifestyle, because if I want to be a good husband and I want to be a good father, there are certain things I need to be able to do. I believe Christ to be the best example of that, so I will follow in his teachings and what he says. Yes, he claims to be God, so I might never know if that's true or I was deceived. I might never know, but I'm okay with that, because my desire to want to be a good husband and a good father made Christ the best choice at that time for me, which is very dangerous, because I could have been in a different religion. I could have looked at a different Messiah or a different person's teachings.
Yeah.
So risky, lucky, blessed. I don't know. So that is when I looked at Christ. And for a long time I was like, you know, I became a Christian because of Christ. Christ. But I still had much internal conflict of, you know, do I really believe in this? But the funny thing is, when I started living that lifestyle, I started experiencing a lot of things. So I started having an in-depth personal relationship with God. I tried submitting to his will, giving up control, not trying to know more than I'm able to know, which might be what it is that you're struggling with. You trying to comprehend what cannot be comprehended. I gave it up. I was like, Christ, I don't care if I'll never know, I'll never experience you. I commit and I put my faith in you. And ever since then, I've grown closer. I've built a relationship. And based on now, what I can say I have experienced in my personal relationship with God, with Christ, I am 98% certain of him to be God. And that 2% doubt is not because I doubt God. It's a doubt of, I know nothing can be 100% sure. And I'll lie to myself if I say I can believe in anything fully. So that is why I now believe in Christ. It's not I follow Christ, because that's kind of where it began. I chose to follow him because of what he stands for and what he teaches. And based on following that, I came to believe when I started having a relationship with him. Because obviously what he teaches is that we should follow him, pick up our cross, and doing all these things, and praying and pursuing a relationship with him. Okay. It helped me. And here I am today, a follower of Christ.
Very interesting. And I'm just going to try and sum the main points up there.
Right.
But within the context of the podcast. You can correct me if I'm wrong. You made an initial decision to try, and it was based on your worldview at the time of good and right and commendable in terms of a husband.
No.
And okay.
Not good and right and commendable. That what I wanted.
But what you wanted had associations of ideas of a good husband. I want to be a good husband or good. That's what I mean by that.
Okay.
So
You got me.
it's kind of the same thing. They're not
Correct.
different.
Yes.
So that's what you went off of at the beginning. You chose a way, and then your personal experience is what gives you the confidence in your belief.
Yes.
That's very interesting. So
Kind of relates to what you said.
it does. So I think that's a very round discussion. We've discussed now how the different approaches you can have to believe, and even what I mentioned at the beginning, most people say you must have this academic approach and you must, but everyone knows at the end of the day, the confidence of what you believe in comes from a very deep emotional place, that you can't tell someone to go do this to replicate that. It's a personal journey. And that's what makes telling other people that they're wrong so incredibly complicated.
I agree.
And I think I aspire to be a Christian and a man of God that is able to speak to other people with this understanding that I'm not going to convince them with logic and facts and history and all of that. It's something else. And I mean, hopefully I get to that point, but the realization that I even in myself believe because of emotional reasons, and I'll speak to other people that are believing other religions for emotional reasons. We are one and the same. And the way you put it, I'm going to take it from a secular perspective. I got lucky. If this is what is true, I got lucky. I got blessed. I got lucky. Same thing, but from a different perspective. But I have so much grace for anyone that believes in anything else, because I didn't really do that much. If you think about it, I didn't go and investigate when I was a kid and do this, and I believe in something now, and so that's everyone. Points.
One last thing I want to say.
Yes.
I'll say it to the audience. I'll pose the question. So Jesus says in Nicodemus, he says to Nicodemus, no one can see the kingdom of God unless they're born again. And this has become quite a circle in my mind. You know, born again is when you kind of commit your life to Christ. It's when you give yourself over to God. You submit to his authority, in a sense. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's my understanding of it. So must I then submit first to be able to have that experience, which is to see that of the kingdom? Or when I see the kingdom and that is going to be my experience, which will then make me commit myself to Christ? It's quite of a circle, because I had it the way that kind of Jesus explains it. And I wonder, because a lot of people say that they had an experience and therefore they came. And then, is that wrong? Is that unjust of God to kind of just give people that experience? I wouldn't say that. I would say they were blessed. For someone to be blessed with a cake doesn't make me cursed with no cake, It's just, I don't know. But yeah, so I pose that question to everyone to kind of think about, why do you believe what you believe? Because we can never say to someone, you're wrong. Because that would claim that I know that I'm right. And if you claim that you know you're right,
Or you have a better way.
you have a better way, that is pride. Honestly, that is pride to make that truth claim, which is why I said 98%. Because you cannot know. And if you believe you know, please comment below.
Yeah, please. Because if you have like an answer to, a good way to go and about it in an objective way, we are open to suggestions.
Yes. But that's the question I want to pose. And then I'll end off with saying thank you for everyone kind of already commenting stuff. And we've had a lot of suggestions for different videos. We just wanted to finish this kind of series, and then we'll start jumping into specific topics on different cases. But please do let us know anything in terms of what you guys want to hear about, and also any constructive criticism. We'll try and start the podcast with what we've heard, and we'll try and adjust accordingly. So we thank you guys, and it was quite a long episode. So I hope your coffee is done, or it's
Mine
just
is.
you're wasting coffee. But yeah,
Thank you.
anything?
No, that was my thank you to end it off.
We
We still don't know how to end.
We're
first
grateful.
episode.
All right, cheers.
Cheers.
Sleep well if it's nighttime.